it's Heather with another installment of R-Rated Reviews. And this review is going to be quite different than my other reviews. It's not about a product, it's more about a service that would be quite beneficial to many, many, many people out there. I kind of think it should be required curriculum learning before you can graduate high school. But alas, that's not the case. Before I dive into it, I can't even pretend, I'm not even going to say this one's going to be quick. This might even be like more of a podcast type video. Because what I would like to review is going to require not a deep dive, but it's going to require an immense amount of information in a simple statement about me personally that I have debated for quite some time on whether I would either be willing to or wanted to share. I'm not fucking embarrassed. I don't give a fuck. It's just, I don't know if this is what people want to hear or not. I mean, it could be really helpful though. So here's the deal. I'm about to graduate, and I could have already graduated, so it's not like I'm jumping the gun. I'm about to graduate a program called DBT, and that is an acronym for Dialectical Behavior Therapy. And it's going to make me, like I'm cray-cray. Yeah, well, I kind of was. Not that anyone would know it. I mean, maybe those closest to me, like close relationships or like kids or something, because this is where the stigma gets attached, and I'll explain it. I have borderline personality disorder, or I should say I had borderline personality disorder. I didn't know what it was. I knew a lot about different personality disorders like narcissism and avoidant, and there's a whole bunch of different, obsessive compulsive, different things. And I actually went to look it up because I didn't know the definition of it, but I knew that there was like there's a stigma attached to it. And I thought maybe that's what TJ had. And I'm like, that's gotta be him. Like, what's wrong? He's like, what? And I watched a couple of videos, now I've been formally diagnosed. I didn't internet diagnose myself, but it took internet medical videos that I watched on the internet, trying to pinpoint what the fuck was wrong with TJ's lack of emotion. And I watched these videos. I'm like, maybe it's borderline. I'm still the one I don't know anything about. Maybe that's it. And when I watched it, the first few minutes, like the symptoms and the signs of it, I was like, well, that's, maybe that's not really him. I'm like, it sounds more like me, And then they gave a breakdown of the 4 different types. I believe there are 4 different types. And I'm like, when they gave the definition and the signs of one that's called quiet or discouraged or quiet, BPD, the tears ran down my face. Not because I wanted to have it, obviously, but I had mentioned to a few people that I was really close to that I'd been in therapy for so long, and I kind of felt like I was getting to the point where, the student was surpassing the teacher, and I had plateaued. But I knew that there was more there. I just didn't know what it was. I'm like, do I need a new therapist? There was a piece of the puzzle missing. And not that I want to be fit into a box or typecast or judged, but I knew something was missing. There was a piece of the puzzle. I had grown. I had come so far. I had processed traumas. I had processed deaths, tons of shit, and there was something missing. And when I watched that video, a few of them, I mean, there was just no mistaking it. And so it wasn't that as I said, it wasn't that I wanted to have something like that. And And I don't run around telling it to people either. So it's a big deal. I'm not embarrassed by it, but it's a big deal that the shit that I put on my channel doesn't get very personal. But it was the missing piece. It was like the aha moment that I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life not knowing what exactly was wrong. Because I'd been told I had anxiety, OCD. Oh, I have OCD. I wouldn't trade that for the world. But I'd been given diagnoses of severe depressive disorder, anxiety, OCD, like all the, and I'm just like, it just didn't, medicine didn't work. Well, that's because there is no medication for borderline personality disorder. You're not born with it. And this is what kind of made me feel better about it. I mean, you can be genetically predisposed to have the type of personality that could fall victim to it, but you're not fucking born with it. It is trauma-based. And it is a repetitive thing that happens that morphs you and just, but that's what is also what makes it curable. It is not like schizophrenia or bipolar, which unfortunately are not curable. Those are treatable with medication, but there's not a medication that's going to work for borderline personality disorder. You might give them an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication to begin with because you're treating the symptoms while you figure out what's going on. But those symptoms are not really the root cause. I wasn't really depressed. I was screaming at myself in my head all fucking day, calling myself a loser and a failure, just thinking I was better off dead and I was worthless and the whole world would just be better off without me. No matter how successful I became in certain realms of my anyway, this piece was missing. And I watched a video from this really awesome doctor. And if any of you want the links, tell me. I'll put some links in here because they're all on YouTube. This one is so treatable and curable that if you go through, there's a specific therapy, DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, that if you go through that therapy, it's sort of like you're in remission. Like you have your signs and symptoms of it are so subsided and minimized that you wouldn't even present with the symptoms of it going forward. Like the diagnosis of having it, you wouldn't even qualify for the diagnosis of it by the time you get through therapy. And it's a year-long program, which my program allows you to stay for an extra 6 months if you choose to, and I chose to. I can even go back as long as 6 months passes if I feel like I slip into my old ways. So it's trauma-based. You have to, they teach you communication skills, distress tolerance, emotional regulation, mindfulness, and they give you the tools and teach you how to utilize and use those tools to cope and handle the world when you aren't taught how or allowed to learn how in your formative years. And I want to give a review about this program because this is where I can get a little bit emotional. In the beginning, I couldn't see how it was going to work, but I was open-minded to it. I would fucking try anything. And the funniest thing is, of all the personality disorders I've read about, borderline is the one that tries the hardest to fix themselves. They're the first ones in therapy because we're people pleasers. We just want to make everyone happy, and if we're fucking something up, please tell us. We want to fix it so badly. But at the same time, there are times that we could just lash out because we can't take the pain. And so I was open to it. And I just sort of went with it, and I tried it, and it's not an overnight process. I mean, you're getting a crash course on being raised from a child to an adult with the skills of how to handle emotional unrest, disappointment, self-worth, value, advocating for yourself, setting boundaries, enforcing those boundaries, and not being walked all over by people. And I've alluded to that in some videos. And I could see progress being made in little baby steps that was like some of them miraculous and monumental. And I've had milestones where I was like so proud of myself because I was able to appropriately stand up to somebody who was like way out of line, where instead of just taking it and then coming home and bitching about it, I was able to say, I don't appreciate being spoken to like that. And something that simple, I was incapable of saying, because I couldn't rock the boat, couldn't cause conflict, and I would just continue to shovel the shit, and I would continue to take it. And then you have your breaking point, but I have reserves. I can still take more. And when you think you can't take any more, I can still take a little more. And then, you know, when you go to drink out of your soda cup and you find that your straw has a hairline crack in it, you don't have great suction, the pressure cooker explodes. I mean, forget all the shit you've been through. All of a sudden, your straw's cracked. And you're like, fucking rampage. Like the straw that breaks the camel's back. And you just go nuts and unload everything. It has nothing to do with the fucking straw. And so, I've learned not to do that anymore. I've gotten to the point where I'm about to graduate. I really don't even need to be there anymore. I know I don't. I have a little bit of fear of leaving because kind of like a chiropractor tells you, as soon as they give you the alignment, your body's in alignment. The problem is your body's so used to holding itself or standing or sitting or doing something a certain way that as soon as you leave the office, your body goes back to the way it was. And that's why you have to keep going to the chiropractor for a certain number of times so your body gets used to being properly aligned. And then you can go about your merry way and go less frequently and then just get an adjustment once in a while as needed. Well, I was afraid that, you know, I've been aligned. And that if I didn't stay with the program, I would go back to my old ways. And so I stayed for the 6 months, and there's a couple of classes I missed here and there that I'm filling in on. And I'm ready to graduate. And I know that my safety net is that if I do go back to my old ways and I do allow people to take advantage of me, or I don't set boundaries or communicate appropriately, then I can go back as long as 6 months go by. But I've also asked them to give me a duplicate binder that I'll buy if I have to, which is a second copy of all of the worksheets. Each week I have an assignment to do. It's these worksheets that teach you. And I would continue to work this program on my own because I'm not fixed. I'm corrected, but I'm still a work in progress. And unless I continue to utilize these skills until they become part of my core and they're no longer a practicing habit, they're just part of who I am, I need to be aware and cognizant that it can be very easy for me to slip back into my old ways because that's how I was for 40 plus years. And I've gotten to the point where those little milestones and the little bit of progress that I saw has become so profound that I get a little choked up. I feel like this DBT program, it saved my life in no uncertain terms. There was no way that I could realistically, feasibly continue to carry on the way I was because I would have had a breakdown at some point, or I would have been hanging from a bridge. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be here. Just couldn't handle the pain anymore. I couldn't handle feeling so useless and so worthless, even at peaks of success. It was never good enough. It didn't matter, it didn't qualify. I screamed and yelled in my head all day long about what a fucking loser I was, that the world would be better off without me. You can only do that for so long before, you have an ulcer or a heart attack or the anxiety and the stress gets so bad that you really just can't handle it anymore. And so I kind of laughed at first when I was like, quiet BPD. I sense of humor. I was like, of all the diagnoses, I get quiet BPD? The fuck? How's that even possible? And then they explained it. It's called the technical, in the manual, the diagnostic manual, it's called discouraged BPD. And they call it quiet because people with discouraged or quiet BPD don't tend to lash out at others. We turn it inside. So when you see the crazy ex-girlfriend that gets the reputation is borderline, there are 4 different, and I don't know all about them. I know about mine. We turn it inward. We don't necessarily lash out at others. We turn it into inward and spend the majority of our waking hours verbally slicing and dicing ourselves. It just doesn't stop. It just didn't stop. And I don't do that anymore. And at first I was like, I don't want you to make me better. That's not humble. What do you mean I'm gonna self-care? I'm supposed to take care of myself? That is so selfish. No, of course you put others before yourself at all times, at all costs. What do you mean I'm gonna have confidence? I have self-worth. I have value. I deserve to be treated the same way I treat you. No. I'll just continue to treat everybody else really good, and they don't have to be good to me. Just don't shit on me as much, and I'd be happy. We would take a fucking morsel and a crumb of not being shit on, and that was what I thought was normal. Well, I've come to the point where I don't think I'm better than anybody, but I know I'm as good as anybody else. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying that. It feels sort of normal to say that. I'm not infallible. I'm not flawless. And I make mistakes. But those mistakes are forgivable. And I learn from them. And it is not cause for me to mentally berate myself so harshly I wouldn't ever imagine being able to say any of the things that I used to say to myself to anyone else. Not my worst enemy. Not the worst pedophile, animal abuser, criminal murderer in the world, do I think. With the admittedly razor-sharp tongue I have and the ability to slice and dice somebody, not ever do I think I could come up with the words to say to somebody like that would come close to the shit that I have relentlessly said to myself and about myself for the entirety of my existing life thus far, until a year and a half ago. That's how bad it was. Yet I'm smiling on the outside, making jokes, going to work, raising kids, being Superman, Superwoman, and feeling like I'm nothing but an utter failure. And this DBT program has made me normal. And unless you're not normal, you don't know the value in that or what it feels like. The Dialectical Behavior Therapy program saved my life. It saved my person. It saved my mind. It saved my heart. It saved every aspect of me, and I don't want to let it go. And that's why I'm going to continue to work on it. And whether or not I go any further into this with anyone on videos, this is simply to tell you that if you suffer from any form of borderline personality disorder, and do not go to Google and YouTube and self-diagnose. Yes, I was already in treatment. I saw videos. I took it to a trained professional and said, could it be this? Because It wasn't bipolar. And it wasn't anything. It just didn't click. And when I saw it, I just knew. It wasn't fitting a round peg into a square hole. And so for me, it worked out. And if you do go to see someone for a diagnosis, maybe it's not this, and they do help you find whatever it is that you are suffering from. But if you know that you are suffering from borderline personality disorder, any of the 4 that I've heard of, DBT, from a qualified therapist or group, will save your life. And I highly recommend that you look into it and sign up for it. Just don't delay. And when you're in it, you'll probably understand why I say it should be required learning on the syllabus before you get to graduate the curriculum in high school, because just with the sheer communication skills itself, in and of itself, that they teach, every high school student would be a benefit. Every high school girl would benefit from emotional regulation and distress tolerance, coping ahead, setting boundaries, learning when to walk away or from a toxic relationship. Women, men, guys, everyone would benefit from it. And it teaches you how to advocate for yourself. Think about it. We're all products of our environment for the most part. I mean, they always say you either turn out just like your parents or the opposite. Well, if you grew up in a house that didn't have the ability to communicate, or you weren't allowed to communicate, how are you supposed to communicate as an adult? You haven't been taught. So I don't think that putting this on a curriculum in high school is going to hurt anybody. It's only going to benefit people. Even the very well-adjusted kids who come from a great fucking house can still benefit from communication skills. If you think you need DBT, or you may have, you're suffering, don't delay, because it is by far, above and beyond, the greatest experience, learning process, growth that I have ever been through. And there is no price that you can put on it. Sign up and go. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. If you want to be a douchebag and say obnoxious shit, go ahead. I can handle it, and I may still come out swinging at you. I may not. Go. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, although I don't need you to for validation. It's just fun. Have a great day.